Hi everyone, I'm Zoe. I'm the program manager here at Creative Edinburgh, and we're so excited to welcome our Connected Innovators today to present the work that they've been doing. So if you don't know who Creative Edinburgh are, if you've come to us from a different place, we are an organization that is a member-led organization here in Edinburgh, and we focus on supporting and uniting creating collaborations within the city. So the first person I'm going to pass over to today to explain more about creative informatics and the program is our lovely Ruth Oliver. So Ruth, I'm just going to spotlight you here. There you go, Ruth.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen now. So just give me 1 second while I get that sorted. Hopefully everyone can see that okay?
Yeah.
Super. Okay, so for those of you who are new to creative informatics, we are one of 9 creative cluster programs across the UK. So really our aim is to bring the city's world-class creative industries and tech sector together and providing funding and development opportunities that enable creative individuals and organizations to explore how they can use data to develop groundbreaking new products, businesses, and experiences. So we're a joint partnership between the University of Edinburgh, where I'm based, Edinburgh Napier University, Creative Edinburgh, our lovely host for this evening, and Codebase. And alongside Edinburgh City itself, our region covers the Borders, East, West and Midlothian, and Fife. So to support the creative industries in and around Edinburgh to become more data-driven, we have 5 industry programs to support this goal. So firstly, Connected Innovators, which is why we're all here this evening, and you'll hear a little bit more about as the evening goes on. But we also deliver skills development via our Creative Bridge program, which some of you may have been participants on already. It's a pre-accelerator business bootcamp run by Codebase, and it's free for participants to attend. Applications for the next round will open in late summer. So Creative Bridge is really a course for creatives who want to learn about startup thinking, innovation, and digital product development. It's really for creatives with early stage ideas who are just at the beginning of the ideation process and who want to learn about startup best practice. We also provide startup funding through our resident entrepreneur projects. So for this one, it provides £12,000 of funding for SMEs or individuals with ambitions to develop data-driven products and services in the creative industries. And you also get mentoring and business support as part of the funding package. And this is open for applications right now. And I'll be hosting workshops next week for anyone who is interested in applying. So it'll be lovely to see some of you there. We also put lots of time and effort into building a community through our events. So we've got a regular schedule of free to attend studios and labs, which provide opportunities to network, to learn about emerging technologies, and to find out about new work that's happening in the field. And then we also have our challenge projects, which offer an opportunity for bigger creative and cultural organizations to bring forward challenges relating to their work that require innovative, data-driven solutions. The Challenge Fund provides up to £20,000 worth of funding to support delivery of a solution. And generally that'll be delivered by individuals or smaller SMEs in the region who have a creative way to address the problems that they've brought forward. So I'm going to leave it there for now. That was just a little bit of a whistle-stop tour on the different things that creative informatics can do. But if anyone has any questions or would like to know about the other funding streams that we do run, please don't hesitate to get in touch. I'd love to have a chat. So I'll just stop sharing my screen and hand back over.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was fantastic. We love working with creative informatics. So I am now going to pass over to our lovely community manager, Inga, who will talk us through today and will be our lovely hostess to take us through all the things, all the speakers today. Sorry, I have like a very bad tickle in my throat, which is why I'm speaking so weirdly. So there you go, Inga.
Yeah, I have my lemon water for the throat tickle, but it's really good to see everyone, and I'm pleased to introduce the speakers from the Connected Innovators funding stream, which has supported creatives in growing their practices in a data-driven way. The innovators will delve into fascinating elements of their varied projects, drawing on how data informs unique areas such as audiovisual and sound design, creating and craft making, lived experiences of functional neurological disorder, and engagement with the scientific community. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Anna. Anna Betancourt is the co-founder and head of sound innovations at Black Goblin. Her focus on art and experimentation, as well as an eclectic background, has shaped Black Goblin's ideas. Anna has collaborated with artists from different disciplines in dozens of international projects, with the contributions delving into the realms of science, technology, and art. As the head of sound innovations for Black Goblin, Black Goblin, that's a bit of a tongue twister. She will often come up with challenges that use sound as medium and science and technology as tools to find out-of-the-box solutions for creatives' day-to-day issues. So Anna, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it is a bit of tongue twister, isn't it? I'm just going to start by sharing my screen. I hope everyone is doing a great today. Seconds, and let's see. Hopefully everyone can see the Black Goblin logo there.
Yeah.
So yeah, yes, as you know, it was mentioned, I'm a sound designer. I'm originally from Mexico, actually, but my creative journey, so to speak, brought me to Edinburgh just over 6 years ago, or around 6 years ago. So I've been working as a professional in the industry for a bit over a decade now. And as it was mentioned, I have led the sound department for multiple films and games and a couple of television projects. And my profession previously has allowed me to collaborate with creatives in my native country of Mexico, but also in the United States, in the UK for the last 6 years. And then I've been lucky enough to do some collaborations with artists from other parts of Europe as well. So I completed my master's in sound design from the University of Edinburgh in 2017. And ever since, and in collaboration with my current business partner, Gabrielle Haley, I have been fortunate enough to work on sound design projects for fixed and interactive media, sonic installations, and kind of pretty much anything that requires sound and that sounds interesting. So from 2018, Gabrielle and I co-founded Black Goblin, and our company is basically an audio service and technology business aiming to provide sustainable and accessible sound for everyone. So within Black Goblin, like Inga was mentioning, I'm the co-director and head of sound innovations. And regularly on my day-to-day job, I'm focused on leading the development department in conceiving and creating innovative sound design products, such as Subversive, which I will talk about in a second. For my Connected Innovators project, I was focusing on exploring the uses of machine learning for the creation of sound in a professional setting. So this required for me to take some time from my current schedule to reinforce my audio digital signal processing knowledge while learning about artificial intelligence and using data in machine learning context to, concerning to sound design. So a completely new area for me. So my assumption at the beginning of the project was that by studying machine learning, I could find ways to improve my company's current in-house methods of sound production. And this is relevant precisely because of our first product, Subversive, which I was just talking about. So in a nutshell, Subversive is a creative suite for sound making. We kind of like to say that it's akin to Adobe Creative Cloud, but for audio. And it's built for visual content developers who are not sound experts, but who require professional quality audio every day. And kind of at its core, Subversive is a collaboration platform to enable collaborations really between visual experts and sound designers like myself. So coming to this project for Subversive, we had already developed a wide array of physical modeling and procedural audio models, which is just a technical term for computer algorithms, which allowed anyone to create sound effects using only a computer and a piece of our software. So normally you have to know that to design these models, we need to study the physical properties of living things or objects and understand how they generate sound. thus translating this knowledge that we acquire into unique algorithms that can create this computer-generated high-quality sound effects. And while this technology we've been developing for a long time, and it responds to a demand in the market, the production of the sound generators or these algorithms that I was talking about, it needs to be done manually, usually, which is very complex and time-consuming and very costly. So therefore, I really wanted to take this time through the Connected Innovators grant to see if I could use machine learning to perform parts of this process more effectively. So during this time, I have delved into current deep learning methods to teach a computer how to recognize different sounds while learning the techniques as well that I currently use. So basically teaching a computer to do what I do when I create the sound generators and improving our workflow. But overall, I have also come across certain technical difficulties that have sort of expanded my understanding of what needs to be done in order to work with sound and with machine learning. And most recently as well, and I think this is one of the kind of unexpected outcomes of Connected Innovators and using sound as data, is that I have commenced a partnership with nature Scott and artist Tuuli Metalainen from Finland, where we are conducting work almost as part of as a result of Connected Innovators, where we're seeing other applications of sound analysis and using machine learning for sound analysis in the context of environmental research. So this new project, which we call Relict, which I had ambition since my application originally to Connected Innovators, but to be honest, at that point, it was pretty much a possibility. It wasn't a very formed project. It has slowly actually been materializing as a result of my work here for the Connected Innovators project. So with Relic, the idea is to capture sound in a continuous manner, to analyze it and to monitor a given space, like say a natural reserve, like Bene, where we were conducting some work in last week, for example. But the methods to analyze sound would therefore also be informative to my Connected Innovators project and to Subversive, because basically we're trying to do the same thing in just different context. So what we're doing with recognizing sound with the Project Relic is step number one of what we need to do with Subversive anyway. So the way it works in a very simplified manner is the process. It's about taking copious amounts of data, sound data, recordings, analyze them via digital signal processing and building an audio recognizer algorithm that could identify species, human-made noise, and other kind of sound dimensions. This is for the case of this Project Relic, but for the case of Subversive, the audio recognizer would, an ongoing and growing project where our goal would be to recognize as much sounds as possible. But of course, first focusing on human-made sounds like movement, speech, and so on, which is probably what we find the most in, films and all kinds of media and so on. So for Subversive, however, beyond recognizing audio, my interest as well in kind of what I've been working on in the Connected Innovators project is to just understand how, from a basic level, other areas of deep learning and machine learning work within media. So one of the things that I managed to secure alongside my team in Black Goblin was a partnership with Robert Gordon University's machine learning department. And we are conducting a project with them where they're bringing their expertise in computer vision. So not only we're working on sound with machine learning, but also understanding how we can understand which images or objects are in an image, given a given image, like a video or a game or so on. So this combined with the work that I'm doing means that we can suggest potential sound effects to the users of our product in the future. So to get to this point, though, like I said, I'm a sound designer. So my background is heavily towards audio design and creation. And for this project, the first thing I wanted to do was to train myself in Python, which is something that was completely, unknown to me. And it was a barrier because the minute that I wanted to start playing and fiddling around with machine learning algorithms, that was the first thing that I needed to know, and I didn't know that. So most of my time actually during the Connected Innovators project was spent training in this area. So I did things like an online nano degree in Python and just basically lots and lots and lots of tutorials. So Likewise, as well, I wanted to delve deeper into digital signal processing methods, which is what I've been doing so far in the last like 3-4 years. But I wanted to learn how other people worked in different contexts. So I also spent a lot of time working on this area with online courses and just doing a lot of experimenting. But yeah, I mean, getting equally important for me, it was to get really into machine learning and kind of, again, how it basically works. Because one of the things that I learned is that it was not only about the algorithms, but also the quality of the training data and how I can use my expertise in audio capture to get better data. So one of the things that I've seen from other projects, for example, in environmental research, is how much researchers rely on the input of people in general, and how many projects currently undergoing are built on things like mobile devices. So I think this is a really valuable work, but there's definitely a huge opportunity to improve capture and to arm scientists with better capture devices that can give them more nuanced information than audio specialists like myself can then help them decode. So this has become yet another possible service or product opportunity for us at Black Goblin. And this is pretty much an outcome, a direct outcome of Connected Innovators. And then just lastly, inadvertently, as an outcome of this project, I also gained some insight into how our development team should look like to work with machine learning with data. So we're a small company, which means that we have to bootstrap our way a lot. So this also means that as a co-founder, I take on several different tasks, and if there's no one else to do something, then I will take on that. And I'm pretty sure everyone probably in the audience can identify, because that's a very kind of is the creative way, isn't it? It's the freelance way. So I do recognize, however, that forming a strong team and bringing expertise is the way to progress. So through my time as Connected Innovator, I managed to secure some support from the data lab to bring in machine learning expertise for the company in the form of a PhD student doing a placement with us. The placement is not commenced yet, but it's definitely a continuation of this project. Likewise, our team is growing with one more member who will collaborate with me in this area of audio, digital signal processing, and machine learning. And to explore also this new environmental research project, which is looking like a big opportunity for us to expand our practice, and that could become a new product or a service. So yeah, as you can see, that's pretty much me. My project was initially very exploratory, but it has opened the doors to multiple applications and to carry on the work started here. And what I learned and the way data to machine learning and collection of training data for machine learning algorithms, all of those aspects are immediately applicable to my company and my practice. And I'm extremely thankful for the opportunity and the space that the Connected Innovators project through Creative Informatics and Creative Edinburgh have allowed me to explore this area and to find ways to grow my business and hopefully bring in some fresh proposals to use sound for multiple applications and in a different context. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna. Our next speaker is Chris Harrison. Chris heads a small business called Bespoke Lighting and Video that specializes in building bespoke installations for the entertainment industry. They are mainly focused on LED technology, hardware fabrication, and the integration of data control systems for lighting and video equipment. Furthermore, they build their own in-house equipment and design installations for both permanent and temporary environments. Chris's objective is to develop a way in which they can mesh the technologies they regularly use in order to streamline their processes and workflows. So Chris, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. So my name's Chris Harrison, and I had a small business called Bespoke Lighting and Video. Founded Bespoke Lighting and Video in 2018 with the aim of providing cutting edge experiences to the entertainment industry. We specialize in LED technology, bespoke hardware fabrication, and the integration of data control systems for entertainment equipment. So we basically have to figure out how to make multiple different pieces of equipment talk to each other in a timely manner. The key to our service, like it said, is understanding and implementing the data-driven technologies and protocols that we find ourselves commonly coming up against. And I was lucky to be successful for the first round of the Connected Innovators funding when I submitted my application for Join the Dots back in 2020. So since starting my technical, my career in the technical world, I've constantly found myself up against challenges when trying to figure out ways to get various pieces of technology to talk to one another. And there isn't commonly ways to find quick routes to make this happen. Like, I've always found myself having to add on more equipment than is really necessary to make these simple tasks happen. So this project that I decided to come up with was basically to explore the viability of developing my own hardware platform that could integrate the various input and output technologies that I often find myself working with. The goal of this project was to provide practical ways to overcome current challenges, to explore efficient ways to streamline some of my current workflows, and hopefully develop some new concepts that I could eventually take to market with some new ideas for installs, for example. Also included in my project was some time to take some time out and explore some new products that were getting released on the market, and hopefully find ways to integrate these into my current business models, really. So I decided to use the Raspberry Pi for this project, and I began learning how to code in Python. And just like Anna mentioned, that was a whole world of awakening to realize that this doesn't happen overnight. So that's been fun, to say the least. So I've always known that there's been complex data-driven communications going on behind the scenes when I'm working with all my common interfaces. And I'm so familiar with these interfaces that I just overlook like what actually happens in the background. So it's been a really eye-opening experience to kind of try and get deeper into the code of this project, or what's involved in some of the pieces of equipment in this project, and really figure out how the devices communicate with one another. Since I've been working in this field over the last like 8 to 10 years, I've been lucky to, or been fortunate enough to basically been exposed to some of the other fundamental understandings of how lighting and video signals work. But these signal formats are basically the very first layer of how these devices communicate with each other. And it's the data that actually gets passed from one device to the other that is ultimately the determining factor of when a specific light, for example, will turn on or off, and when it will do that, which is pretty crucial when working in a live music environment, for example. So understanding these data languages combined with an interest in electronic and hardware fabrication background is ultimately what allowed me to start my own business, and allowed me to specialize in the area of work that I currently work in. Learning how to build custom lighting and controllers, and learn how to control them via data streams from various sources gave me a small niche in the market from which I've been growing from for the last coming up for 4 years now. And having an understanding of how the electrical equipment works and how the data moves in the digital domain really allowed me to basically pick and choose which hardware to use for my projects, which really allowed me to work outside of the constraints of normal off-the-shelf products that would have been the alternative to some of my installations. So what you see here is basically an example of some of the temporary LED installations that we've done using our in-house built equipment over the years. And just for reference, below each picture is a number of individually controllable data channels used for the LEDs alone in these installs. So you can see the number of actual data channels that we're managing can get quite significant when the installations get quite big. And these installs can be driven with live data, or they can be driven by, they can be pre-programmed, or they can be programmed to music, time-coded to a musical track, for example, and left on loop for weeks or months on end. Each controller unit is connected via traditional networking infrastructure, and the data commands are sent from a video server, which uses animation files to generate the patterns and colors displayed on the LEDs. All the front-end equipment is waterproof and easily scalable, and this has allowed us to be really flexible when it comes to scaling up our projects, and also allowed us to work in quite demanding environments, like being outside in the Scottish winter for a month on end with basically no failures, which is pretty good. These next images are basically some of our back-end or front and back-end pictures of some of our more permanent installations. And with a lack of events over the lockdown period, pivoting into permanent installations was a natural progression really for our business. And we now constantly are looking for ways to improvise our permanent installation methods. And as I mentioned before, being able to understand how the technology really works and what's involved in all the components really allowed us to cherry pick what we could use on the jobs, and sometimes save on the cost of the jobs as well, not having to pay a specific supplier for their whole chain of products, where I can like modulate essentially what components are in that chain. And yeah, it's worked out pretty well for us. This third picture here shows a bunch of pictures from our Connected Innovators projects. So you can see here there's all sorts of coding scripts going on. There's a bunch of products which I managed to ascertain which are quite new to the market, which have really helped my workflows already, and a bunch of components and circuit boards that I was starting to use to essentially try and negate having to buy off-the-shelf products for certain solutions to my installations. And again, this has been a massive learning curve trying to learn Python. Like I thought it would be great trying to buy all these components and making them talk, and it definitely was not as easy as that. Like it took a long time to even get the very basics to work, which was quite awe-inspiring, I suppose. When you look at some of the products that are off the shelf, you realize that somebody has spent a lot of time to actually develop these simple products. But it's been good. It's allowed me to really customize what I want to get out of my hardware really, and streamline the kind of footprint of it as well. Like I don't necessarily need a component that does 10 different things. I might just need 4 separate tasks that it can do and do them quite well. And being able to take the time to learn Python and develop these pieces of hardware, I think will really help open doors for my business moving forwards, being able to supply specific products that my clients might need, while saving on the cost side of things as well, especially with the semiconductor prices or shortage in the world, putting the prices of everything up. I think that'll be really beneficial moving forward. But it's been a huge learning curve, and I still feel like I'm only at the tip of the iceberg for learning Python. And I've definitely still got a long way to go. Like Anna was saying, I took some online courses as well to try and get my head into it. And even that was very, very tasking, not coming from a coding background at all. But it's been really good fun. And I think I'll definitely continue to use the Python coding language moving forward, because it seems to be the one that everybody's using nowadays as well. So yeah, that's pretty much me and my project in a nutshell. I'd just like to say thanks to the Creative Informatics team and the Creative Edinburgh team for allowing me the time to take the time out of my busy lifestyle and really get down to the nitty-gritty of what really runs the back ends of most of my day-to-day working practices, really. I've kind of fleeted with the ideas of looking and getting deeper diving into these ideas before in the past, but I've just never had the time really or the resources to do that. And taking this time out of my life has actually been really good. And I believe it's really going to help moving forward, especially when coming up with new ideas or being confident when talking to clients about developing ideas that potentially in the past I might have thought were possible, but now I definitely know they're possible, and I can be more confident when offering these ideas up to the market, which will be pretty interesting to see how we move forward with that. So yeah, hopefully you see some of our installs around soon, and if you want to see more about our company, you can check the link at the bottom there. And that's me.
Thanks so much, Chris. I see in the chat everyone's like having conversation about Python as a coding language. So
it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think the innovators should form a support group for that. Yeah. Great. Well, thanks so much, Chris. Next up is Andrew. Andrew is a multidisciplinary artist, architect, educator, musician, composer, curator, and gallery founder. With people and experience at the center of his practice, Chris is interested in the empathetic connections between the work and those experiencing it, and how this can be created from raw data and information. This project will develop an ongoing body of work that focuses on functional neurological disorder. So, Andrew, take it away.
Unmute myself. Can you see the big banner image? Just because I didn't.
Yeah,
yeah, cool, brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. Sorry, that seems like quite a mouthful. Yeah. So I hello, I'm Andrew. My background, I unmuted. My background is as a commercial architect, and then I have kind of retrained myself to become an artist and musician, if you like, or put those endeavors at sort of the center of my kind of vocational. And this is really what I'm going to talk about here. So in my art practice, I work with a wide range of media. So paper-based, word, video, performance, sound-based art. And I'm kind of interested in stories. And so, you know, what I think that's kind of where I've sort of realized and different stories that are out there, and kind of trying to pick information apart to sort of help us find universal aspects of these stories as well. So this project is alongside, is working with, funded by Creative Informatics, working with FND Hope. So you might be asking what FND is. So FND is functional neurological disorder. It's a medical condition in which there's a problem with the functioning of the nervous system and how the brain and body sends or receives signals. So rather than something like a stroke or multiple sclerosis, which has like a physical kind of issue with something that's wrong with your brain and your nervous system, there's actually nothing wrong that can show up on any scans. However, it can encompass a wide variety of symptoms such as stutter, cognitive impairment, jerks or twitches, paralysis, limb weakness, seizures, and can be seriously debilitating. There's a great many different potential causes for it. It's not fully understood, and it can present in a huge number of different ways as well. Why I'm interested in functional neurological disorder, or FND, is that it's a constant part of my life. My wife was diagnosed with it following a bicycle crash involving a car in 2015. So it's and that's a kind of permanent diagnosis, and so the way that it's developed. So and so that's kind of where my interest comes from. I started making work from it in 2017, 2018, which was to do with our married life, and it's kind of carried on from there. And Creative Informatics has let me take it on to the next stage and develop a lot of skills and sort of invest in it as well. So the purpose of the project is to, one, raise awareness so people know what FND is and that it is a thing, and also I guess the yardstick for me to judge if this has been a successful artistic project is I'm really trying to portray the lived experience of those with the condition rather than a list of symptoms. So that's what my main interest is. And in a sense, the data stuff is a tool for that. So the data in itself is not that interesting. Or, well, it is, but it's actually, but it's more that portrayal across. So I think it's kind of what that allows me to do. So looking back, and this idea of stories and portraying, working with data that's sort of happening. So this is 2 previous art projects which I've done. So the one on the left is called Telling Stories, Chelsea Road. So that was, I had an exhibition on that street, and I decided to make an art project all about just the feel of that street and the love of the people for that street. So I went around and interviewed a number of shopkeepers. I think I interviewed 8 in the end, and we just sort of sat down and had a chat, and I sort of filmed them. So there was a film output for that. So I used, this was sort of me developing a silent film trope of them talking, and you sort of getting that emotional response. But also I transcribed all of those interviews, and actually just very simple, quite a simple, doesn't require Python, but just ordering that in number of frequency of words that came up. And as you can see, it's sort of, that in itself was just the piece of work, but actually that was engagement. So the people that came to the exhibition, they were actually, which were mostly people from Chelsea Road, this street, they actually engaged in quite a significant way, and how you, what those words, the frequency, the high frequency words, the low frequency words, and they, it wasn't, it became an abstract thing in a sense. There was a connection with it. The other one, which is Toll, which is a piece which I made last year and is currently on show in Wrexham, was taking all of the data from the Offices for National Statistics across the UK and making a single mark for each of the deaths that were associated with COVID. So there's 145,652 marks, and it's over 6 rolls of paper, and it was kind of trying to de-abstract those numbers and sort of make you appreciate what's going on. So those are kind of 2 previous projects and sort of introduce my work a little bit. So coming back to this project, this has been based around, so my methodology was to sort of use the interview trope. And so I did 6 interviews with set questions of people. I have nearly 7 hours of interviews, which I've just been transcribed. And so that is my raw data for this piece and sort of the source. And so I too have been learning Python, and I feel like I'm probably behind the other 2 presenters, and it is really tough, I can tell you. But yeah, so using Python as a tool, I was told it was to learn Python was the correct way to do it, that would be useful more in the future. So yeah, still trying to get to grips with that. But so that's my data set, is these 6 interviews. And so it's really using the NLTK's natural language toolkit that's as part of Python to sort of try and delve into that information and try and find new things. If a kind of frequency list can actually engage people, I think there's more to find in those parts. So and the process has 2 parts. So interviewing the people. So I'll just flick on. Hopefully this will work. Maybe it won't work. There we go. This video is starting now. So my interview process has 2 parts to it. So I read a favorite childhood story to the person for the first part. So for 20 minutes, I sort of sit and read them their choice of book. And then we go into the interview afterwards and actually talk about what their life is like with FND. And part of the output, so this is was a kind of prototype interview. Part of the output is actually using these videos and this video output of a pair of videos without sounds. You can't hear what people are saying. If you can lip read, you can read, you'll be able to understand what they're saying. But at the same time, there's an emotional split of this difference between, and I think it's kind of trying to take it away from lists of symptoms and trying to get you to emotionally connect with the people involved or those. So yeah, so part of my process is also learning about AV installation and dual videos, and facilitated some purchase of some equipment, some projectors and things like that. So I'll be able to take this project on the road as well, with any hopefully be able to take it around some shopping centres and NHS places as well. In terms of, so that's a little bit, that's kind of an example of one way that I have been tested it out previously. The other way is actually relying back on my kind of ink and paper work and making physical work. So this is an example which was quite an early piece, which kind of came out of sort of me making it more about our married life at the time. And so this is I made up or using a 5-bit binary alphabet to sort of encode letters or things that I wanted to say. So this actually says FND in it, and so kind of hiding that encoding allows us sort of, and I think this is one way that I might try to, visualizing the data in the similar way to Toll and the sort of COVID numbers. There's sort of different ways to visualize the data so that you actually have you're not looking at it as if it's an Excel spreadsheet. You're actually looking at it as if it's a piece of artwork, and then there's clues either in the title or in just longer explanations that will allow you to kind of to engage with it in a more meaningful way. So this one's called "You Could Have a Functional Neurological Disorder Tomorrow," and the letters that are there are FND. This is another piece which is called referral. And so as a visualization, it's actually just representing the 6 months referral time for 6 weeks of mental health treatment that you can generally expect on the NHS, and that's what my wife experienced on the NHS. And so to give you an idea of the scale of these things is pretty big. So this will also be this will be part of the outlet for the sort of data analysis and finding words and sort of that stuff. So that's kind of a quick explanation, hopefully not gone over too long. Probably have.
Sorry, I was on mute still. That's great. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was fantastic. So those were really great. And we're going to start our first round of Q&A so that we give an opportunity for people to ask questions. There was a question already for Chris in the chat. So Chris, this one's coming your way. What's the coolest thing that this more bespoke / self-developed kit has let you do so far?
Sorry, I actually replied to that privately, but
did you? Can you reply
that's cool.
to yeah.
So I was saying the coolest thing, it doesn't look like the coolest thing because there's no fancy parts on the Raspberry Pi. It's just an internal script that basically allows me to translate between 4 different digital protocols, like industry standard protocols, translate between each of them. So essentially 2 devices that don't speak the same language can communicate with one another. And I think that'll have massive results or massive impacts, especially in the installations I'm working at. Like if you have something that speaks one language, not another, you just can't make them communicate. So I think this will definitely help a lot of people, really, which should be quite cool.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. And thank you for sharing that reply again. Apologies. I didn't realize you had replied in the chat.
That's all good. No worries.
So amazing. So I'm open the floor to everyone else. Our chat reflects that clearly there is a need for a Python support group. So maybe we'll start that as well. Another little strand route. And Nicola, maybe that's something we can work on. So Caitlin asks, what are you most proud of as part of your work already? So I'll go in order that we went off. So Anna, would you like to answer that first?
Sure. I think for me, I was talking because obviously like there's the whole aspect of my work with Black Goblin and with the product that we've been working on it for ages now. So that's a very important part of my practice, of course. But for me, this kind of that kind of almost will sound a bit dramatic, but that dream that I have about like marrying sound with environmental research and things that I'm really passionate about in my personal life. I think that's probably the part that I'm the proudest in terms of the Connected Innovators, because it really facilitated that part, that kind of body of work that otherwise I think I would have just kind of left for later and later. So yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. So Chris, same question. What are you most proud of?
I think a very similar answer, taking the time out to actually this, like I've been to do it for a long time, and I just haven't through not having the commitment or the time, but just been able to take the time out. And I've really been patching a lot of things in my life that I probably should be doing, but I've been putting a lot of things off to the side just to focus on this and just think this is the time that I need to do this, and just not worry about the other things that are, I don't need to worry about them. But I think, yeah, just taking the time out to really commit to this has been something that I've been proud of.
Oh, amazing. Andrew?
I think it's probably, I mean, it's a similar kind of thing, you know, being able to facilitate the time. But I think what that's meant for me, it's been less about kind of taking time for myself, but it's more actually being able to get around the country, you know. So I've sort of traveled all around the country and chatted to just 6 different people, but the actual engagement with the sort of joining up with FND Hope, which is one of the UK's major FND support kind of charities, awareness charities, support charities, with teaming up with them with just like 2 blog posts, there's a huge response. And I think I had 90 applicants that were keen to be part of it. And so I got some online forms. So previously I'd done little bits of work, you know, kind of asking people, and there's work that I haven't shown, which was kind of like what 3 words. I'd ask like a smaller Facebook group that I was sort of part of, FND support Facebook group, that sort of what 3 words would you describe it? And you know, you very quickly get a lot of responses, but and I got kind of, the first time I did that a good few years ago was sort of 19 responses, and I was like pretty blown away with that. And you can, you know, that's a lot of information. But the engagement that's come through FND Hope, and I've got some online forms on my website, I've got sort of like 90 to 100 responses for these things, kind of, and there's anonymous people like just kind of getting involved, and the engagement, and just people thanking me for doing it, which, you know, I'm kind of, I don't know, so that's it's a pretty tough subject, and actually one of the hardest things is sitting and sort of not taking it all on board for the stories that people are telling you about their lives, but also the people diagnosed with it are just so keen to raise awareness, but also thankful for anybody that is doing that as well. So I guess that kind of that wave of engagement has been quite overwhelming, and I guess that's probably sort of the proudest thing, or I don't know. It also puts a lot of pressure on me to do a good job, you know. So
yeah, that's the double-edged sword, in that, you know, when you get so many responses and then you're like, oh okay, I have to actually do it.
Yeah,
like
I've really got to
now.
like but you know, it's people's lives, so it's not like it's I you know, I have to kind of take it very, very seriously, so there's a sort of a responsibility with that. So yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure if that's quite the answer, but
no, that is amazing, and 90 responses is phenomenal, so really well done. So there is one last question that I'm just gonna leave out in the open. I'm not going to put you on the spot to answer if you don't feel like you have a response. Comes from Ola. Is there anything else we could do, so Creative Edinburgh and Creative Informatics, to help you on your professional journey beyond this project? How could we showcase your work so that many people have a chance to experience it? So do any of you have a response to that? And no pressure, because it's a big question.
I'm going to say creative informatics have been quite helpful. Been given, it's pretty like it helped me secure like in space, and Nicola Osborne's also facilitated me talking to other academics and sort of giving people to advise me. And there's kind of been courses that have come through, so that's been really useful. So being able to help me find an exhibition space at the moment, which is pretty tricky, that's been pretty massive. Future, big question, don't know.
Yeah,
really I think like and again, not to like be like, you know, but I just think that you guys have been doing a great job, because it's one of those questions that it's very tailored to each one of us, I think. And like Andrew said, like the help, and I mean, if I had more time, I'll tell you about all the ways that Creative Edinburgh and Creative Informatics has helped me already. But yeah, I think it's a toughie one.
Well, thank you for trying to answer that. I can take none of this credit as Creative Edinburgh because I've only just joined. So I will pass that to the rest of the team. Please bask in the glory of feeling very appreciated just now. So we're going to give everyone just a small break, like 2-3 minutes, just to get another drink and get ready for our next round of presenters. So I'm gonna just go quiet for a bit, for 2 minutes, and we'll see you back here in like, let's say in 3 minutes. Give everyone 3 minutes to get another drink, and we'll see you here at 4 minutes to 6. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the first round of speakers. Well done. You did it. You got through it. And Inga, over to you.
I'm sorry, that was funny. Let me contain myself. That laugh was everything. So next up is Jonathan Alders. Jonathan is an artist who is inspired by evolution, particularly our evolved intelligence and how it has enabled us to understand and reinterpret the world around us. Jonathan is an artist best known for projects like the Laser Garden and Betty the E-Waste Shark, with an interest in crossover projects with science and data. And they are developing Cognition Art, which is an online resource for artists who are interested in engaging with the scientific community to produce data-driven exhibitions. So Jonathan, over to you.
Right, 2 seconds. Here we go. So yeah, thanks so much for the introduction. Can I just check that everybody can hear me okay? Because I was having a bit of bother over. Great.
Yes, you're all good now, Jonathan. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so thanks so much again for the introduction there. Yeah, I'm Jonathan Elders, and Cognition Art is my Connected Innovators project. Like Zoe was saying, it's an online resource for artists who are interested in connecting with the scientific community, with a view to producing data-driven exhibits at events like science festivals. So yeah, why did I want to do this project? So I've been working myself as an artist within the scientific community for about the last 6 years. And if I'm honest, it's been pretty good. It's given me a lot of opportunities, especially to engage with new audiences, gaining access to spaces which I might not have had access to before, and also events. It's also scientific community and their events tend to be incredibly well attended. So in terms of public engagement opportunity, it's been brilliant to kind of have access to such large audiences. And yeah, on top of that, you know, being able to kind of reach out and speak to researchers and scientists and learn more and get kind of more inspiration from all the different projects they're working on, kind of what I've been finding out about. So yeah, that's why. And, you know, working with, kind of mentioning access to different audiences. As you can see there, one of my pieces of work was kind of in the papers and it was on TV and things. Also kind of, yeah, different science events also tend to have online content. So I've taken part in those kind of events before. So it really does give you a really good access to all sorts of different audiences, not just the people who turn up. Yeah, so my resource, Cognition Art, is going to be a website. As I say, it's a resource for artists who are interested in connecting with the scientific community. The plan is to have all the information that they could need to feel well informed and feel confident before they do reach out and approach people. I think it's really important that people have that, not just that they feel confident, but so they can kind of start pulling together ideas for what their data-driven vision is actually going to be. Because if you have that and you can talk about it with people, then firstly, they'll be more impressed that you're organised, and secondly, they'll have something to get enthused about. They'll have a project to kind of talk about and bounce ideas off about. So it is really handy to have that, and that's certainly been my experience, that if you do approach somebody, then you have a project and an outcome, they're far more likely to respond to it. So yeah, if we're looking at pathways, how we can assist artists. So one of the things I'm going to be doing with this is I'm going to be hosting an event which is going to be a combination of a workshop and networking and panel discussion. So we're going to invite several different delegates from kind of science festivals and events, and also organisations which help facilitate artists and scientists to come together. And we're going to have a workshop where we're going to look at kind of key points, kind of discuss opportunities, but also potential barriers and kind of how to navigate past that. Yeah, we're going to use these points which are raised to then inform the panel discussion, which is going to be recorded, and again have delegates from different kind of aspects of the science community, like the people who do organise the events, and record it so that the key points can be shared on the website and on other media online, so that if people are wanting this information, then they can have those little recordings from the actual source, from the actual people who said them, and they can reference that quickly and easily. Yeah, and also myself, I took part in Creative Bridge course through Creative Informatics, And as part of that, I'm very aware that you have to test your product. You can't just assume that it works. So if there is anybody who's interested in taking part in the workshop and the discussion, or using the website, or even just following the advice and seeing how it works, I do need to test the product. I also need to check to see that it is what people want and what people need. So yeah, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. And next up is Madeline Shepherd. Madeline is an interdisciplinary artist with an interest in textiles, science, maths, and science fiction. Under the brand name Not a Not, she creates fashion, accessories, and homewares. She's currently working on 2 collections, one based on NASA photographs of solar system objects, and the other using patterns derived from cellular automata. Madeline's project looks for patterns that emerge from an algorithm called Conway's Game of Life, which also resembles traditional Fair Isle knitting. So Madeline, I'll hand it over to you.
Hi, I guess I've successfully unmuted. So thank you very much for that introduction, Inga, and thank you for the whole event and the whole funding programme to Creative Informatics and Creative Edinburgh. I'm very pleased to be part of it. It feels like a natural home for some of my out there ideas as far as various other worlds are concerned. My background is in mathematics, and in the early 1990s I was reading around the subject and came across the idea of cellular automata, and the first thing I thought of when I saw them was knitting patterns. This has been a fulfillment of something that I've been mulling over for quite a long time. I've been machine knitting since the 1980s. I've been making things for longer than I can remember, and I've funded it mostly through a day job in admin. So in 2018, I finally gave up the day job and I'm now doing this full time, which is great. And the funding programme for Creative Innovators has given me the chance to investigate Conway's Game of Life using my hacked knitting machines. And so first of all, I'm going to start sharing my screen and show you a hacked knitting machine. Am I going? Yes. So this is going back to the end of 2015 when I first took one apart, but just for somebody said in the chat they had an Arduino that's been lurking for ages. This one here was lurking for about 9 months before I drummed up the courage to take the machine apart and fit it. This part is the controller that replaces the big controller that I took out, and the whole thing runs off open source software that a group of people in Munich developed not long before that. So I managed to get it all plugged in, the lights came on, and first thing I did was started using image data and just taking a photograph and reducing it down to the number of needles on a knitting machine, which is 200. And so each pixel goes to one, and knitted some portraits. So this is James Clerk Maxwell, because 2015 was the International Year of Light and he seems like the obvious candidate. And this is me with a hand-drawn computer image. So I drew the and I'm about to knit it. But what we're really here to see is the game of life, and I know quite a few people probably don't know about it, so I thought I would show you that instead of more slides. We'll go to website, and so anyone can go to this, playgameoflife.com. I'll pop it in the chat later. And it's basically a grid of squares, and each generation of the process has squares that are filled in, squares that are not filled in. And if a square that is filled in has if a square has 3 neighbours that are filled in, then it becomes filled in the next generation. If it has less than 2 neighbours or more than 3 neighbours filled in, then it empties out in the next generation. So you can set up a little arrangement like this, and you can see what happens in the next generation, and in the next one, and in the next one, and in the next one. And I'm just going to start this running automatically and talk over it, because what happens is that the cells interact with each other, and you get this organic growth that looks very much like living organisms, like cells from bacteria or slime molds or something, growing and dividing and spreading out. And from that very simple rule that I told you at the beginning of that, you wouldn't imagine that those 5 cells would generate all of this. And it keeps going. In fact, this arrangement doesn't settle down to any kind of stability until over 1,100 generations. So that was the nub of what got me interested in this. And then, and of course you can see the grid apply, it looks like a chart for knitting from. But I'm going to stop that one there. And you'll see some of these look a wee bit like the small things you might find in Shetland knitting, repeating over and over, but some are quite different. And I'm hoping to incorporate some, but there's just so much richness in this that I had to narrow things down a bit. And so I've been looking for things that oscillate, that just go around 2 or 3 different states. So this is a nice one. It starts out like this, and I'll just run it. You can see it grows and divides and spreads out, and after a little while it does eventually settle down into a repeating pattern of 3. So you get that one, and that one, and then it goes back to the beginning again. So I've extracted those 3, and I'm now using those in a knitting pattern. And the other one I'm working with at the moment is called the diamond ring, and I don't have the precursor set up. I've just got it oscillates through 3 states as well, so that just does this. And so each of these gets set up to knit. So I now have, from this, I have to take it, make an image that is pixel for square, and then I can build repeating patterns and so on. I can add other things to it as well. I'll go back to the slides, and you'll see that. Now I've deliberately left that really small. That is pixel for pixel on the screen. What I knit with, that's the pulsar image with a static block called Cohort and the elements of something called a glider, but we can go into that later if you need to know. Next, this is what that pattern actually knits up to be. So we have the pulsar motifs and the glider in the middle there. Next is a scarf made with the same thing. I'm trying to introduce colours that look a bit like Shetland and Fair Isle knitting designs, and that's the diamond ring pattern. Again, I've deliberately left it tiny. It is only 60 stitches wide. So that's it on the computer. So this is my old kit, because I have had various issues I'll not go into that just now, but this is a Windows 7 machine with the previous version of the knitting machine controller and my older knitting machine, but working its way through on the open source software as we go, and the output looks like that. So again, you've got the 3 stages of the diamond ring and some static forms in between. I've started trying to introduce these bands at every time a background colour changes, so that it starts to resemble the traditional knitting more. And then I started to introduce colour even more, and it kind of works, but I need to learn a lot more about placement, and I need to stop making mistakes as well, because here I made a mistake with the lines. I should have had an extra line of pale green background. So there's some personal discipline to come there, and a lot of education. I have also been able to upgrade my kit using the funding from this project, and the next image shows the new machine I've bought, which has a ribbing attachment. I say new machine. All the machines I'm buying are second-hand because they stopped producing them towards the end of the 1990s. And there's nothing particularly similar, and certainly nothing that you can hack to put the input in from the computer. This machine takes its instructions through a Mylar sheet, and it also has a port where I can plug in a floppy disk drive, and there is an open source software that will plug a laptop straight into that, so I don't need to muck about with the electronics in this. So that's next stage, is to get that up and running. It also has a second bed of knitting needles so that I can knit different stitch structures, and that should get rid of the very messy effect that you get on the back of some of these things. But this is the Mylar sheet, and these little squares here are all I need to put into the machine's scanner to create an overall repeat pattern. Now, this pattern was announced as a new discovery in February from people investigating the game of life, and it's what they called an agar pattern, which is the name comes from biology. It's a spread right across the screen, repeating, and it just sits there. So I thought that's ideal for this, and without any hacking or anything, I can do this with it. So I have the little block there, and it's surrounded by the repeating patterns of the little S-shaped squiggles. So I made enough of it to make a nice scarf, and that's quite satisfying. This is actually yarn from Shetland. That's the other thing I've been investigating, is the yarns so that I can have something that is authentic as possible in spite of being informed by all of this techie pattern generation. And the other thing I need to learn, as I said earlier, was how to colour scheme. So this is part of my homework for a course that I'm doing at the moment on making traditional Fair Isle hat called a kep for fishermen. So it's a long, narrow hat, and it has quite an interesting structure. But the main reason I'm doing the course is actually for the instruction on the colour scheming. And so the tutor's been teaching us how a traditional colour scheme would get put together, even if you don't use traditional colours. So these are what I've been knitting. That's 2 samples of different colourways, and you can see the blending is much better than on my previous sample, and that's it washed up with a pair of mittens, a mismatched pair of mittens. So that's pretty much where I've got to with the project at the moment. But I'm also beginning to research things at the National Museum of Scotland. So this is an old Fair Isle traditional pattern book that's actually on public display. Anyone can go and look at it. It's from about 1927 to 33. The Shetland museums also have actually published a couple of pattern books from about the same period, so I have those to consult as well. And then the top part of this refers to a jumper that's in a painting from 1923, and you'll see that's the jumper there. Now, I don't expect to produce anything quite as complex as that at the end of this project, year to the end of this project, but you never know. But you see that there are some things that are just like clunky mismatches and so on that probably modern Fair Isle designers wouldn't do anymore. They're trying avoid anyway. So maybe more of the folk art style with some of my mistakes. Anyway, that's where it's gone. I've always used data in my work, and this is a one-dimensional cellular automaton. This is image data from NASA. We mentioned solar system objects. This is the Saturn's rings, and these are the fabrics that I made from that photograph. These are the products that came from those fabrics, and I've also used the Apollo 11 images to make wall hangings. And I've also taken the Game of Life motifs. This is one of the pulsar motifs, and during Shetland Wool Week this year there was a course and a workshop where you could make your own piece of fused glass based on Shetland knitting, so I decided I was going to put the Shetland knitting idea into that, and I did actually get the colour fade quite well with the three shades of blue in it as well. So that's my Game of Life can go anywhere with Shetland knitting as well. I think I'll stop there, and I've probably gone way over time anyway. So thank you very much for listening. I can now read everything that's in the chat.
Thank you so much, Madeline. Your patterns are really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
And last but not least is Rebecca Kay. Rebecca Kay is based in Edinburgh and works under the moniker of Plotter. And Becky, you can correct me if I'm mispronouncing that. Sparked by ever-growing curiosity, she explores the natural world by merging the fields of mathematics and design. The focus of her work to date has been using data files to create risograph prints of her work. So Becky, over to you.
Hello, I'll just share my screen so you can see presentation. Hopefully, can you see that and hear me and everything okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to be talking about my project Plotter, and which is basically taking environmental data and turning it into visuals. And then those visuals I've been printing as Inges said, as risographs. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I produce those and the data I use in a minute, but I thought it might be useful to say a little bit about my background. So my work at the minute is merging maths and design, but up until this point, until the sort of funding actually of creative informatics, I had two basically quite separate routes. I was doing maths on the one hand, and on the other hand, I was doing design as this completely separate journey. So I'd always been interested in the two, but it was really at A levels where I couldn't physically, you weren't able to do maths and art. So I chose maths, which then took me down this route of doing a degree in maths in Manchester, and then coming up to Edinburgh to work as basically with data. And I spent about 10 years or so doing that. But at the same time that I got this job in Edinburgh, I was still wanting to do some more design. So I started going to evening classes and taking holidays and doing sort of afternoon classes and things in the Edinburgh Art College. And it was basically sort of different modules within the the degree course. So I did that over the course of 3 years. And then I did a master's in Napier in communication design, started doing a few courses in printmaking, and started screen printing work that I've been basically producing, which led to me doing some freelance design work. But this was very much going on in the evening and weekends, and I was still having this day job doing data during the day. So it wasn't really until about five years ago where I thought I'd try and bring these two things together and started doing data visualization. Basically, it was sort of a freelance company that creating dashboards and things like that so visualizing data essentially. But it was more corporate reports, and it wasn't really the making that I'd sort of really enjoyed about this design journey that I started taking. So with the help of the creative informatics, I started Plotaire, which was basically a combination of maths and art, which I was really interested in, and the other thing that I was interested in my spare time, which was the environment. So yeah, so I'll just talk a little bit about how I actually create them. So I basically have an idea or get inspired about something about the outdoors. So this specific example on the left-hand side is tree rings. It's a tree ring design. And it came about from having a walk in the forest, and there'd been an information board about how tree rings, the way they grow, are directly influenced by the weather. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to create a tree ring pattern, but using weather data. So I went away and researched to see what information I could get. And there was the Met Office had open data about weather over the past 200 years. So pretty much all the data that I use is or like freely available information. So because I knew what I wanted to do in terms of the design, create these tree rings, I basically, on the right hand side, this is a bit of code for something else, but it's in the same program, which is a program called processing.org. And it's open source and it's free to download, free to use. And it basically, you can link data with this program and then use the variables, the information within the data set, and I suppose essentially draw with that data. So I'm basically manipulating pixels on the screen. So for these tree rings, I took this information it was daily maximum temperatures across the UK for the past couple of 100 years, as well as the minimum temperatures. So each of these rings represents a different year, and each degree of the ring is basically a day. So the way I'm creating them is having the idea of the output and then coding it using maths and formulas to turn the data into the visuals that I'm interested in. So the project, the creative Connected Innovators funding, was really for looking at two things. So firstly, it was looking at using different types of data. And the second was using different methods to produce my work. So things like screen printing and letterpress printing, and then textiles as well. So the first thing actually this first image crosses both of them. So it's a screen print that I looked at using sound data, music basically. It was a music file of the Dawn Chorus. And I took that recording, it was from the British Library Sound Archive, translated it into numerical information, and then basically wrote one of these programs within processing to visualize that data that I'd got from the sound. So it's essentially what you see here, these ribbon curls. I was trying to, I suppose as well with my work, I'm trying to actually tell the story of the data. So because it's about music, I wanted a link to the music. So these ribbons are supposed to look a little bit like musical staves. But the pattern that they're showing is almost what you'd see on an equalizer, basically, when you're playing a record. So it's just allowing me to take data in a different form as opposed to a spreadsheet, which I'm used to doing, and then loading that straight into processing. This was actually involved using processing to get data from a different type of file in the first place. And then the next example is looking at the knitwear. So it's quite different to what Madeline was just talking about, that she's hand knitting this herself. I'm using someone else to create these, and actually that was part of the Connected Innovators as well. I wanted to work with makers to create these, and I was bringing the data element and the design, and realizing that in traditional craft form by working with other people. So this basically, again, is data. On the left-hand side, I was looking at natural habitats and information about all the sites within the UK that are listed as nature reserves or sites of special interest, and taking information about where these sites are, so latitude and longitude, as well as whether they're marine sites or terrestrial, and then highlighting certain elements where there's species within these sites that are basically endangered, or on the red list. So the program, as well as creating these designs, I've also created another program that will then translate this these visuals I'm creating into the pixel patterns that, again, Madeline was talking about, to essentially have my output ready to be created into a textile. So that's the summary of my work.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rebecca. That's beautiful. And you should now read the praise that is coming in for your work on the chat. It's really stunning patterns, really beautiful. So thank you everyone for staying and listening to our 6 speakers. It's now round 2 of questions. We already have a questions for Madeline from Andrew in the chat. So the question is, how prescriptive is the traditional knitting pattern? How do the Fair Isle knitting community react to your new patterns? So that one's for you, Madeline.
Well, I'll answer the second bit first. I haven't hit them with it yet. So I don't have specific reactions. I've spoken to people who are, I suppose, more in the commercial craft end of knitting in Edinburgh. And they're all go, oh, this is interesting. Oh, they already knew I did stuff like this. It just wasn't referencing the traditional work so much. The older stuff is, oh, I'm just looking for, I looked out some books. There we go. I don't know how prescriptive you'd call it, but I mean, there's lots of stuff like this from the 1920s and 30s that have been probably handed down for generations, and then being handed down again through museum archives, as well as people knitting their own pieces. Lots and lots of variations on a theme, but it's, and these were published by the museum up in Shetland. So I don't know that, I mean, everybody's allowed to interpret it with their own colour schemes and buy their own yarns from their own sheep, or use the natural colours that come straight from the sheep and so on. So it's very personal as well. There's just a huge amount of stuff out there, and there are people adapting it for the Paris and New York catwalks as well. So it's not that prescriptive, I wouldn't have said, but I think what I'm doing is probably a step away from what, I mean, their decisions are purely aesthetic and draw on the handed down patterns. So what I'm doing is kind of the other way around. I'm looking for traditional colour schemes and developing my own patterns. So it's, I've yet to see how they react, though. I want something worth showing them before I tell them.
I think it's definitely worth. I think you definitely have something worth showing them. It's all very beautiful. I really like that fleece at the end. I thought you could definitely sell that in a shop. Like, even though you said there was a bit of mismatch in there, but I think no one would care. I think it's such a beautiful pattern.
Yeah.
So amazing.
Yes.
So do we have any other questions for any of our other speakers from round 2? Oh, here we go. As a data, oh no, it's not a question, sorry. I just saw as a data dinosaur. I like that, Monty. So just a lot of praise coming in from the chat for you guys, which is very well deserved. All 6 projects are phenomenal, and it was such an eye-opener for me to sit and listen and hear all the results that you've come to find through your research. So really well done from us and the whole team.